Well, hello everyone. This is Christopher with Elm Street Cultural Arts Village, and we are here today with Jennifer Griffin with Jennifer Griffin Studios.
Hi.
Hi, Jennifer. Jennifer is a local artist that actually does quite the multifaceted array of artistic mediums, and we'll of course let her talk about that better than me. But I know that whether it be photography or more maker craft oriented things, or I mean we've actually worked, Jennifer's worked with Elm Street on a couple of different projects, off and on as well, so it's been fun throughout the years getting to see Jennifer work on those different projects, or even with Art on the Green. I know it's been a couple of years that you've done that now, so
Yes, several years.
Jennifer, I'm going to turn it over to you at first, just as an introductory of what what is Jennifer Griffin Studios, or what are the different aspects of Jennifer Griffin Studios as a artisan or maker.
Well, I everything that I do is obviously made by me, but I decided actually this year to separate out all the mediums that I work in, simply because the people that are drawn to, say, the jewelry that I make are not the same people that are drawn to my photography, are not the same people that are drawn to the barware. So just to help my audience and fans, so to speak, differentiate, I kind of separated out some of those mediums. However, my heart and where my soul gets poured out is in Jennifer Griffin Studios, which is my photography and costume design and that arena.
Definitely. So I'm gonna let you unpack that a little bit, because I was gonna ask, but I had a feeling that it was the soul feeding was the costume and photography relationship that you have created over the years. Can you unpack that and just describe that for somebody who um, maybe is getting to know you for the first time, of what you do in that arena?
Well, I don't call myself a costume maker or designer. I prefer the photography aspect of that, and so I call myself a visual storyteller. Um, Sorry, my
No problem at all.
um, lost my train of thought. So I have to create the costumes and the props and the all that stuff in order to create the images. So from a financial perspective, when I did my very first shoot, which was 7 or 8 years ago, it was therapy for me, and so I decided I wanted to do another shoot. But in order to do that, I had to come up with funds from somewhere to make the costumes and the props to do the next session. So I decided to sell the costume that I had made and take that money and invest it in more supplies to make new things. And it just kind of snowballed from there. I had already had an Etsy shop, and I was making little boy bow ties and suspender sets and little girl hair things, which I was just doing out of a need to provide a little bit for my family financially. But I didn't like it. It just kind of was, I knew how to do it, and so I did it. But I put this costume that I had made in my Etsy shop, and it sold like that. Then I had people emailing me, asking me, can you make it again? Can you make it again? Can you make it again? And it just kind of said to me that I needed to be creating things that spoke to my heart, because other people saw that. And then the images themselves had become kind of popular, like on Pinterest. So yeah, I just went from there and decided that I just needed to stick with my true self and not try to sell, not try to make to sell, but make to speak to people.
Nice. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that I have to say, from the pieces that I've seen, you have several pieces in, or you have had several pieces in the lobby at Elm Street, and of course, you being at Art on the Green. There's definitely a uniqueness to the photography of the. I would call it, and forgive me, I don't, but I would call it almost like this fantastical element
Yes.
of 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 photography, not necessarily um, with a desire of a portraiture, but almost a portraiture with fictional, fantastical elements to appreciate in and of themselves. Is that fair?
Yes, that's definitely fair. The images that I create are not family portraits, although I think it would be super fun to use my style to do a family portrait because it would tell a story.
It would.
I'm not capturing a moment in time the way that traditional photographers do. Traditional photographers record family memories, record memories. I don't do that. I create stories that are visually stimulating. Um, Sometimes I use family members to do that. Sometimes I use models to do that, just to help fund my creativity and my art. I do offer sessions for people, um, but it's a niche market. Not everybody wants that because it is a specific genre and it is a specific niche. So niche. Yeah, it's I definitely have a particular style, and a lot of people, if they've been following me for a little while, can look at something and say, "Oh, that's Jennifer Griffin," signature things, or other artists that may have a similar look. People will send me images and say, "This looks like something you made. I had to double check to be sure it wasn't you." So it's which is kind of cool, that people recognize my style, I
But
guess.
there's definitely a brand awareness there, I think, that goes. I mean, I know when I see something like, oh, that's definitely Jennifer, and I mean that endearingly in the sense that, well, and I guess what I was interested in, because I mean, I hear what you're saying about the Etsy, um, the Etsy shop, and that was a fund and kind of almost a happy accident where people started requesting the more
Right.
fantastical elements that you were doing. How did that translate over to photography? Um, yeah,
Well,
I'll just leave it
my
open.
my mom and my dad did photography when I was super young. My mom in particular. My mom sewed all my clothes and she made all my Halloween costumes. So there was already this sort of built-in desire for something visual. I have always done some sort of art, always, since I could pick up anything. But photography in particular, I don't know what it was that drew me to it. I did a little bit of landscape photography before I had children, but once my first child was born, um, there was this almost instinctual desire just to record everything. And in that, I developed this idea that I could paint with photography. I could create images the way traditional um, oil, painter would paint a picture. I could have a similar effect with a camera and take a picture of that in real life, and it translates the same as far as invoking, feelings and emotions and telling stories the same way a painting would. So I just found that I just had a knack for the photography as compared to the canvas. I love canvas painting. I do it. It's um, kind of a break for me to use a canvas, but my heart is just in the photography and telling stories via the camera lens. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, definitely. And do you? And I've heard you talk about it in the past. So when you're aiming towards, you know, when you're creating, as far as your process goes, as far as the photography, do you create the costume pieces knowing what elements, what particularly fantastical elements or the environment that you know you're going to take that photograph, that picture in? Do you create that all from the get-go, knowing what environment you're going to take it, what fantastical elements you might put into the piece uh, that aren't real, that you might generate? I don't know if you use
Oh, I use Photoshop. Mhm.
Photoshop. So like, um, do you know what elements are going to come from each medium? Whether it be the environment, the costume, the person, the Photoshop. I mean, do
For
you,
the most part, yes.
okay.
I typically like I have journals. In fact, I was telling somebody the other day, my journals are not filled with normal drawings the way a regular art journal would look. Mine are filled with notes and ideas about stories, and how that would translate in a photo, and ideas for who could I use to help portray this idea, or this feeling or this thought. So sometimes, yes, sometimes I'll just get this vision, um, and know what the costume's going to look like, where I'm going to shoot it, how much of it's going to be real, how much of it's going to be Photoshop. My goal in my photography is to use uh, the least amount of Photoshop as possible as far as um, costumes and props and location. I prefer to shoot on location out rather than in studio. But in some cases, especially recently, going out to shoot with someone is just sometimes not an option. And sometimes it's a safety problem. If I'm wanting to shoot a child, as a fairy, say, for example, in an environment that's not safe for them, then I'm going to totally Photoshop that. Or if it's a scale. So I have an image of a fairy sleeping in a bird's nest. There is no way in real life that's ever going to happen, obviously. So it's Photoshopped. But I knew that going into it. So when I shot her on a black background, with particular lighting, knowing where she was going to end up in the image. Sometimes I just get an idea for a costume piece and then I build the whole image around that. Some recent images I just posted, of my model in a white outfit with a silver crown and she's holding the earth. That was a whim. I created the crown for a different photo shoot, which I totally intended to do. And I thought, wouldn't it be awesome to do a warm and a cool version of this crown on these two different sisters? So that's how those images turned up. So while the gold tone images were intentional, the cool tone images were happenstance and were oh, look, this would be awesome to do. So sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. Just kind of whatever unfolds, I guess is the best way to put it.
No, that makes total sense. And very artistic of you, of just having a plan and yet letting things happen sometimes organically. Let me ask, what do you use, or what do you draw from, your inspiration from for some of these pieces?
Multiple sources. I am strongly influenced by nature, which is why I do a lot of fairy and elf type things. And I'm also highly influenced by my ancestral roots, particularly my Scottish roots. So a lot of Celtic fairy tales, myths, legends, that kind of thing flavors my work. I love um, legend and myth. There's always life lessons to be learned in these things, which is why they were told, stories were told. Um, and, I would love to expand into other cultures and explore those um, myths and legends as well. So I do have future plans to kind of explore that, um, in the coming years. So yeah, that's probably where most of my inspiration comes from, is just nature and my ancestral roots.
Very nice. Um, Walk me through from origination to displaying in a gallery or wherever. We'll get to that in a second. But how long does that process on average take? I know there's outliers or give or takes, but
Yeah. Um, well, I guess it depends on if, for me in particular, if it's an individual image, um, really the costume making aspect is what takes the longest, and then finding somewhere to show. Those would be the two. Otherwise, the photography part of it doesn't take long at all. If I've planned well, which I try, just so I don't waste my model's time, or if I have helpers, my helpers' time, I try to plan out the actual photo shoot, so that there's room for mishap, but so no mishaps happen. um, I, then there's the series. If I have a series, then that may take up to a year. I'm actually working on a series now. This whole virus thing kind of pushed it forward probably about a year. Um, it'll probably take me a year to make and shoot, and then I'll have to, and then finances. If finances work, I'll be able to get the prints in order, and then I just have to find somewhere to show. So series takes much longer, where individual shots or single images, like the warm and the cool sisters, fire and ice thing, didn't take long at all. Maybe 2 weeks to make, create, shoot, and have final images. So it just depends on the size of the project, really.
that's fair. Do you, when you're creating either a series or I would imagine that if you're, some of these pieces are for, as you've said, a creative outlet for you, but I imagine that a lot of them are intended to go into exhibits or galleries, or I know you're in several places. And do you try to create, I don't mean this disingenuine, or where you're not genuine in your or authentic in your pieces, but are you trying to create, is the is the goal to be on display in exhibits or to create those relationships? I don't mean to make a sale, because you've already addressed that. I guess what I mean is that an enjoyment for you to kind of put your work out there for because primarily it's a creative outlet for you, but it obviously has evolved into appreciation on the receiving end of that. And so has that been an unexpected, pleasant surprise of, wow, there's a lot of people that genuinely appreciate this, and I like to get to that phase with my pieces, like the end goal for my pieces are that. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. And I would say yes. First and foremost, I create just because I'm a creator. Um, but it is inspiring and helps keep me motivated to continue to create, knowing that other people enjoy it as well. Sharing a bit of my soul that connects with the soul of someone else. Um, that's very important to me. I do mixed media as well, and though that people connect with that as well. Um, Again, it's like, canvas painting. It's kind of something I do just to kind of switch gears. It's like anything, any project you're working on, no matter how much you love it, sometimes you're so invested that there's kind of a block, and you have to kind of step away and then revisit it later. That's what other mediums do for me. They also, when they do sell, they help fund where, my vision, because not everyone wants a photograph of a fairy. um,
Sure.
People like to look at it, but they don't want to own that. So I guess my goal would be to get to the point where uh, people do want to own prints, um, so that I can continue to make. Because without that financial support, I can't make. It just boils down to that. I hate it that it's like that, but it is what it is. I mean, that's just the way the world works. So you know, it's difficult balance to have. It's difficult to not create simply for a sale, but also understand that without that sale, I can't create. Does that make sense?
No, totally. I think that's I mean, I think that's a big struggle in general of, well, yeah, I think it's a struggle of authenticity,
Right.
knowing
Well,
that, as you mentioned, it's a niche market. So sometimes I mean, that's the definition. That's the very definition of niche, is it's authentic and yet for specifics.
right.
Um, and though, while it doesn't necessarily generate the sale, bat in a thousand, it does create those moments, which are, as you mentioned, the overall brand of and buy-in of what is Jennifer Griffin Studios, or that's why I mean, I wish that I were better at visual art in general, but that doesn't mean, like, even I walk by a Jennifer Griffin picture and go, yep, that's Jennifer for sure, and that's, I think that speaks to what you do, both on the branding, but the authenticity behind it. Um, well, let me ask, what has this is I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Okay.
What has been the best, or I shouldn't say best, what has been your favorite or most enjoyable series, or something, if not favorite, if we don't want to pick favorites, notable um, series or photography that we've been able to do?
That's a hard question, because I have some favorites for different reasons. Um, hmm. I guess maybe the very first photo series I did, which kind of brought me on this road. I still look at those images and can't believe that I got them with the camera and the lens that I had, because they were like not professional at all, and yet the images endure. And it's just crazy. So probably that session, which happened to be with, at my time, 5-year-old daughter. Um, but I patterned and created her costume from scratch. Like, I created the pattern and everything. Since I've recreated the costume multiple times for adults and other children. Um, and I just have an appreciation for the series because it led me on this road. It opened this whole new uh, door for me, um, create creativity wise, as well as just solidified photography is my thing. And then actually my recent work, over the last couple of weeks, has been uh, gratifying as well. Not that everything in between wasn't, but I have been able to see growth in these past few sessions that I've done, mostly with my older daughter, just because of the whole quarantine thing. Um, but it gives me hope for the future. So my first session just solidified the road that I'm on, and these recent ones have just given me hope for the road ahead. So that's probably why those in particular um, are probably my favorites.
Very cool. Well, let me ask, how do you, if one were to look at, I think you still have an Etsy shop, or
Mm-hmm.
you still have, okay, so that, whether that be for jewelry or something else, or it, where would we look to see some of these photos, and or reach out to you if we're interested in working with you?
There's several different avenues for that. I do have a website, jennifergriffinstudios.com. I have some gallery. I have a gallery there, portfolio gallery. It's not completely up to date, with probably 6 months old, but there's a contact page there. I have an Etsy. I actually have 3 Etsy shops, but my main Etsy shop is Jen, Jen, Griffin Studios, only because Etsy doesn't allow more than, I think, 20 letters. So, um, and Facebook, Jennifer Griffin Studios on Facebook. All of my most recent stuff is on Instagram and Facebook, because as soon as I get those images done, that's where I post. The last thing I post to is my website. It's just the way that it is. Just because I engage with people online through social media, where I don't so much through my website. So, so yeah, any of those things. Instagram is the same, Jennifer Griffin Studios on Instagram as well. So, yep.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's a lot of different content on all of those mediums, but
Yes.
it's a lot of fun to look at and see, like I said, the fantastical elements of what you bring to the table, or rather the canvas, the photo. So I'll leave this open-ended to you, a little bit on the spot, but also at the same time, is there anything else that you, while we have people watching, that you'd like to say?
Well, just thank you for those that have supported me all these years, and to new people, thank you for giving me the opportunity for this interview. Um, and just to kind of reiterate that these other avenues, the maker aspect, help support me continue to create these images. So um, I do have a Thistle and Sky, which is where my jewelry is, which is everyday stuff for everybody. And then the Griffin House, which is barware, wine stoppers, stemware, flask, that sort of thing. All that can be found on Facebook and on Etsy. So, and there's links that link everything to each other. But yeah, so if you want to support me, but don't necessarily want to buy a print of a photo, but you really like these earrings, buy the earrings because they help support the photo.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And to reiterate, yeah, we went down the rabbit hole of photography just because I know that's where a lot of passion is, and walking through that process. But I know Jennifer is multi-talented, and obviously on any of those websites and whatnot, there's multifaceted layers and layers of both maker and artisan mediums. So definitely check all of that out. Jennifer, thanks so much for sharing this time and a little bit of your heart around these pieces. I know I've enjoyed over the years getting to know you and work with you, and I'm sure that we will continue to do so down the future. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of the pieces that you come up with upcoming series. Anything super secretive that you might want to spill in an interview that might on the
right now
horizon?
I'm still planning, and I need some. I've got some gaps I have to fill first before I can start spilling the beans. But once that starts happening, then yeah, definitely.
Some cool
Definitely.
things on the future for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Jennifer, thanks so much for joining us. Thank everyone at home for watching. Continue to check out Elm Street, and definitely look at Jennifer Griffin Studios and all of the subsidiary websites and Facebook, social media, everything. Check out all of that she does, because it's a lot, and definitely support your local artists. So thanks for joining us, Jennifer, and we'll see everyone soon.
All right. Thank you.